Hello, and welcome to Stumbling Forward, a podcast about real people and the failures, spiritual awakenings, life changes, and lessons learned that shape them into who they are today. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stumbling Forward. I am Erica Taylor Beck, the founder of Authentic Foundations, and today I have the opportunity to talk with Florina Pop, who was an ex-lawyer and is now a holistic life coach. And so, Florina, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. Can you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, hi Erica, and thank you so much for having me on your show. So a bit about myself, as you mentioned already. So I'm a holistic life coach at the moment, but in my past life, I used to be a lawyer. So I worked in the private sector and public sector for many years as a European lawyer, so international lawyer focusing on EU law. And then after a while, life happened, and I wanted to change my career. So here I am today.
Nice. So, how did you get into being a lawyer? So that's something that you have to go and study a lot of time to do. How did you even get into that?
Yeah, so wow, that's a really long story, but I'll try to keep it short. So, I mean, as a background, I'm from Romania, like a really small town in Romania. And in high school, my teachers always used to say that I'm like the people's advocate because I always had to fight for the rights of someone or my rights or changing things. I was one of those people that always liked to debate and questioned everything. So somehow this kind of seed was put in my head that I would be a good lawyer, debater, all that. So then I just left Romania, went to the UK to study law because I just put it in my mind that, I want to be an international lawyer. And that's how it happened. It was just like kind of a sequence of events that led me there.
That's awesome. It's a great thing to be called a people's advocate because that's I think people need more of those. How long were you a lawyer? How long were you actually in the legal business?
So I was studying for about 5 years and I was working for about 10 years. So in total, I would say around 15 years in total.
Okay, that's a long time. What was the tipping point where you said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah, so I basically broke down. So I had like a burnout. I still love the job of a lawyer. It's just I didn't want to deal with the environment and the stress and the working hours and the workload and all that. Because, well, especially when you're a lawyer working like me for extremely high level authorities or in top law firms, the responsibility is insane. The type of clients you have. I mean, you were talking transactions of billions of euros. So those were
Wow.
the type of transactions that I was working on. So, of course, the workload was super intense. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It was something that, of course, over the years, the tiredness, the stress accumulated. And I remember one day I was at work and it was just the basic team meeting. We're all talking about what are we doing this week. And then my turn came and I started having anxiety, like a proper anxiety attack. Heart palpitations, sweating, I couldn't speak, my voice was breaking. And I knew, okay, something is not right because this is literally my bread and butter. This is my basic work and I cannot even talk about it. So, of course, then I switched off I tried to speak, I couldn't, and I switched off the Teams and just cried. Yeah, so that was like kind of the big moment where I said, okay, something is off because I cannot be so triggered by a basic team meeting. But I was just so tired, my whole system just kind of crashed.
Yeah, that makes sense. It builds up little by little. And if you don't take the time to address it or fix the root cause and you just stuff it down and say, okay, I'm just busy, or there's been in a tough situation or clients I'm working with, and brush it off, brush it off, brush it off, it starts to add up and it builds up to a point where then it's almost insurmountable.
Yeah.
And so when you hit that point where you had your breakdown and you said something needs to change, did you decide then to quit or did you think maybe I just need to take a vacation or what was your next step after that?
No, so initially I was in denial because I was like, okay, this is not happening to me. I'm resilient, I'm strong, I achieve everything I want to achieve. So initially I was, okay, something is not right, but this is not happening. I had that kind of contradicting debate with myself. And then I was having lunch with one of my mentors, and she said to me, listen, I'm sorry to say this to you. I know you're a strong woman, but you need to take a break. And I just looked at her and I just felt it in my gut that she was right. Like I had to face it. I needed a proper break and not just 2, 3 days. I needed a
Yeah.
real break with myself. So then I took a couple of months off. I took the time I needed to reset and figure out what the heck is going on. Like you said, go to the roots of what was going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did that. I know this is luxury for many people, but I felt like I reached a point in my life where I had to be honest with myself that I needed some really deep reflection as to what I want to do next.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Not everybody can take that time off. You and I talked originally, and I had a similar-ish story. I didn't really have a breakdown of sorts where I was really overly burnt out, but I got to a point where I just wasn't feeling
Yeah.
aligned with what I was doing. And I was in a culture I did not enjoy. And then I quit and took some time off to figure out who I was if I wasn't my job. Because my job had been, almost 20 years. This is what I've been doing. And I loved it. At least I thought I loved it or thought I was happy in it. And when I wasn't resonating anymore, I quit because I'm not happy. I'm working way too much. I'm not feeling fulfilled. Actually, I feel really stressed all the time in every area of my life because it was spilling over. And I took that time off to volunteer and take a break. And I was very, very fortunate because I had some savings and I'm also married and my wife was still working. And so it is a luxury. And I then started my business because I did not want to go back to doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
So for you, after your break, did you go back to legal? And do you have any advice for somebody else to maybe ask the right questions to figure out where they should go next?
First of all, I went back to legal because at that point I wasn't really sure what to do next because nowhere in my life had I ever thought of leaving the law because I had invested so much and so many years and I kind of reached the top of where you can go with my job that once you're there, you don't think of not going back. So I said, okay, I will go back because I still have bills to pay, but
Yep.
I will take the time to actually figure it out. So I didn't want to rush into, having one of those, knee jerk decisions where you quit and you don't know what to do. So I went back to work, but during that time off and after, I went to therapy and I did coaching. So, these are basic things I think everybody should take into account. But the other thing is, just like yourself, I really took time to reconnect with myself and to rest. Also, doing things that recharge me. So, things that brought me joy. So, purely having fun and not thinking about it, because if you're thinking about it all the time, you're overthinking, then you stress yourself, then you give yourself more anxiety. So I made sure that I actually had a lot of time where I wasn't doing anything. So that's definitely something I would recommend, resting. The other thing was I went on and I studied to become a tantra facilitator because I wanted to learn about energy work, so masculine and feminine and balancing that. Because I realized that we all have masculine and feminine energy. And my work, by its very nature, is a very masculine type of work environment. And also, it required me to be in a very masculine energy. So that was, of course, very draining for me because I was essentially expected to work like a man in a way, and I couldn't recharge my feminine. So all the flowy stuff, intuitive stuff, creative stuff, enjoying life. So I really spent time studying all that and learning how to incorporate more of those practices in my life.
I love that you mentioned having fun because it's something that as I've gotten into spirituality, trying to heal your inner child, because many of us have things that we carry from childhood, whether it's generational things or whatnot. But as we get older, we are so much more serious
Yeah.
and it's about paying the bills and doing the work and sometimes just having fun and not worrying about what people are thinking, not worrying about your next step, just going and enjoying the moment and being present. It makes a huge difference and how we view things and how you feel because you're just being. You're not overthinking it. You're not stressing about it. You're in the moment, feeling it, letting it happen. And it's a game changer. And I also love that you brought up the masculine and feminine energy because that's something that I had not heard of until maybe the last year or so. And I think many people probably aren't aware of, especially if you're not in that spiritual environment. So I'm a lot more connected now with people in that mind space. And so I hear and see these conversations happening a lot more than I did when I was in corporate. And so I would imagine that many people are not familiar with it. And it's like you mentioned, masculine energy. It's when you go out and you're doing and you're getting stuff done, it's being more assertive. But then the feminine is more of the marketing aspect and the communication and receiving and flow. And that's a really very simplified version of it.
Yeah.
But I spent most of my life in the masculine. And now, as starting a business, I'm learning that I have to be more receptive. And it's not so much about how fast you can work and how much you can do. It's sometimes about waiting and receiving and letting things flow to you. And that's been a really hard lesson for me to learn. And I imagine maybe for you too, coming from being a lawyer, something I'm just not familiar with and how to just be. I don't I don't know how to do that. And it's taken me a little bit of time to adapt to that kind of mindset. And so if you want to elaborate on any of that, because I know I simplified it very, very basic, but
No, I mean, you're perfectly right. It's a huge topic. We could talk about it for a couple of podcasts, not just one. You did well to kind of simplify it. But you're right. I've also been struggling with that as well because for many years, to achieve my goals of becoming an international lawyer, I had to be always on the clock, always doing things, always achieving things, always thinking 3 steps ahead, always planning. So I didn't allow myself the space to just be and just flow and see what happens, see what comes to me. There was literally no space for that because everything was so planned and organized. When I started to learn about these concepts of masculine and feminine energy, it just kind of hit me like a truck because I realized as well that I was so much into my masculine energy, and a lot of that was also because of the work environment. Even if
right.
I didn't want to, I was sometimes forced by the circumstances, and that was one of the big factors in my decision making process as well. Okay, what kind of life do I want? What kind of working my environment do I want? Do I want a work environment that is going to push me to constantly be in my masculine? Or do I want a work environment that will allow me to flourish and expand the way I feel? Not to say that I don't have ambitions, because I still have ambitions, I'm just who I am. I still want to achieve things in life. But I don't want to do them at a rhythm that doesn't suit me because when I did that, I felt sick physically, emotionally. I mean, I had stomach ulcers and other problems as well as a result of not being in my energy. So yeah, it's been a huge eye opener for me to learn how to kind of carve in moments of feminine energy into my into.
I really love it when I'm able to do it. I did not work yesterday because my wife had worked over the weekend, and so she was off yesterday. And I was like, you
Yeah.
know what? Now that I'm doing my own schedule, I can be off. I planned no meetings, and we went hiking, and we got to spend the day together with our pets and everything, and it was a great day. And normally I would have felt like, wow, what a wasted day professionally. I didn't get enough done, but sometimes that's all you're supposed to do is just be, let it go. You have to build in those moments, but I'm so much happier because I don't feel like I'm forcing as much.
Mhm.
And that was something too where you, especially in corporate and legal, like the more you do, if you want it, you got to go for it. Come in early, you stay late. And it's about the effort that you put into it. And this is a shift where it's now not necessarily about the effort. You can't force it to happen. When you learn more about the balance, it's really interesting. And it has brought a lot more emotional balance for me to feel a
Mhm.
little bit more at peace where I can take some time off and not feel like a failure or not feel like I'm being lazy. And I love it. I wish I had learned it 20 years ago, but here we are learning it now, and at least I'm learning it, but it's fantastic. You said after your break, you went back to work. How did that play out for you?
I was a lot more detached from my legal work. And it was becoming clear to me that it is not a work environment where I see myself in the long term. So all the digging that I did with, therapy, coaching, self-reflection, everything in a different light for me. So I came back to work and I didn't have the same motivation anymore. Before I was
Yeah.
like looking at promotion opportunities and all of a sudden I just didn't care about it anymore. My whole focus was on how can I build a more holistic lifestyle. So I continued doing the job because after so many years it was something that I was comfortable with and I could do it easily. It was still demanding at times because the nature of the job, but I spent a lot more time trying to figure out, okay, what changes do I want to make that will actually have a long lasting impact. So, not just something overnight. I don't want a quick fix, for tomorrow or for a year from now. I wanted a long term plan. So, I spent quite a bit of time studying, to become a life coach, get my accreditation, did the practice, pro bono, all the things you have to do behind getting the accreditation and changing career paths. So that was a process. Yeah.
I understand where you said once you had time to really connect with you and you went back to work and you said, I'm more detached. And that's kind of what this whole podcast is about, is that we start off on this path thinking we're going to go from A to Z, and then things happen. Life happens and you twist and you're like, I've had this path in mind forever and I'm doing it and I'm doing well with it, but I'm not happy anymore. It's not what I want to be doing. It's not who I am. And it's a little terrifying. And maybe you can relate to that, is that when I decided that I wasn't feeling this anymore, what I was doing with corporate, I didn't know what else to do. And I was comfortable. I was happy with it for the most part. But if I don't do that, what do I do now? And it's terrifying to have to almost start over. And I was 40 at the time. Yeah, I'm like midway through life. What do I do with the rest of my life at this point?
Yeah.
And so how did you pivot from what to the idea of I'm going to go into holistic life coaching?
Look, it was again one of those seeds that was planted with me actually. So I was this was even before my breakdown. I was doing an ayahuasca retreat, and the facilitator there, after the weekend, he suggested I go train with them and become a facilitator. And I said to him, "What are you talking about? You're crazy. I'm a lawyer." It was just like out of the blue. I was completely surprised. And he said, "No, you have something. You definitely have a talent for it. There is something inside of you. Maybe you don't see it now, but this is something that I'm proposing to you." He said, "Just think about it. Just whatever." So I just kind of left it. I thought it was crazy, but part of me got activated. And then after that, life just happened in such a way that a lot more people, even people that I didn't know, kept on coming to me for advice, even friends of friends, people traveling from different countries to come and see me with their life problems. And then I was talking to my sister and I was like, there might be something there, in the support type of area, like me supporting people somehow. So that's how it slowly evolved into, yeah, I'm going to be a holistic life coach. But again, it started off with a seed that someone planted because they saw something in me that I couldn't see. And at the beginning, I was resistant. But then the more I reflected on it and the more I started having awareness of, okay, what's happening in my life. So then it felt like a natural step. But it took me a while to kind of accept it. Because the first time when this man told me you should become a facilitator, I was like, "You are crazy. I'm a lawyer. It's fine." So it was a process. It didn't happen overnight.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about almost societal conditioning. You were like, but I'm a lawyer. There's this identity that we take of, I can't do that. I'm this other thing. Being a lawyer is very logical, very fact-based and fact driven. And you almost go to the opposite end of the spectrum. You're talking about ayahuasca and the
Yeah.
freedom that comes with that. And they're almost stark opposites. I'm trying this because it's something very different and it's a good experience, but at my day job, I do this other thing. And we almost get conditioned to, this is what we should do. This is the right thing. This is the responsible, the logical, the correct path because it's a lawyer. It's held in decently high esteem and it makes good money. But this seems so loose and very flowy and not accepted in mainstream anything. And it's really interesting that people who are more spiritual, they seem a little bit more woo-woo and a little flighty and a little bit more loose and free. And we almost look at that as a bad thing. They have these, you shouldn't have to work 40 hours, 80 hours a week. And you're like, that's really naive of you and so simple. But they actually have a right. These woo woo folks are so much more connected to the bigger picture of things. And I feel like we get our blinders on and we just focus on what's right in front of us because that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're told is the right thing. That's what we're told is the good thing. But when you take those blinders off and you start looking at the bigger picture of how we're all connected and connected to the universe, and energy is everything, we're really pigeonholing ourselves into this tiny little box that there's so much freedom in breaking out. And so you were in that box thinking, I'm a lawyer, I can't do that. And I love that you broke out a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's alignment. And when you're doing what you're aligned with, you start to attract the things that are also aligned to that, which helped you nudge in the direction of saying, okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's more to it than I thought. And I really love that because the universe was saying, hey, Florina, this is it. You're doing it. Keep moving in that direction. I think we're kind of asleep most of life, and some of us don't wake up, but it's really hard to shake the preconceived ideas that we had or that other people have for us or that other people are living by to be able to have that freedom. But have you run into people who are more like how we used to be, where it's that's too woo woo, like I don't want to work with that because that seems way out in the left field?
Yeah, I love this question actually because I work with a lot of my, let's say, former colleagues, so like lawyers and other people in corporate. And it's interesting because initially, when I wanted to be a holistic life coach, I didn't think I would go back and work with the institutions or lawyers, but somehow they were coming towards me. And then I saw it as an opportunity actually to bring spirituality to them in a way that is digestible. So maybe I'm not gonna change their lives and convince them to go to ayahuasca. It's not my intention. But I am bringing smaller practices like meditation, mindfulness, a little bit of energy work. So now I'm actually scheduling an energy work on masculine and feminine energy with one corporation, which is huge, right? So it's
Yeah.
exactly the type of people that I used to work with, well, and I used to be one of them. They are now slowly opening up. And even if maybe I cannot do everything I would love to do with them, I'm still opening the door for them. And that for me is already massive. The fact that we're
Yeah.
having a discussion, and even if it's just a little meditation and talking a bit about energy, and they're already receptive and asking for more, for me, that's already the win.
Yes, and you obviously know that they need that because the job is stressful. It does add up. I love what you said about digestible because if you try to throw too much at people, they immediately shut it down because it's way too fast, way too much.
Yeah.
But when you start to just implement it in small stages, those who really want to will probably reach out for more. And those who are saying, this has been really helpful for me to manage my stress and feel a little bit better about what I'm doing, that's good enough for them. And I think that's a really great way to do it is to introduce it slowly and let people find you that want to do more. I think that's fantastic to be able to do it with other lawyers and other folks that you worked with because it's so needed in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I just feel so privileged, but at the same time, it's also part of my personal journey as well. Because at the beginning, I thought I would have all these people that are already open to spirituality and it's going to be so great. And then I realized actually more people than not are not open to spiritual, context. So you have to kind of break it down to them, and then it's up to them to decide whether they want to learn more or not. And I'm very happy to be in that position to open the door. That was also for me kind of a learning experience as well. Yeah.
That's great. How do people find you? How do people work with you?
Word of mouth, obviously. Of course, I have my social media and my website as well. So my social media, Facebook and Instagram, is Mindful Connecting, and my website as well is mindfulconnecting.com. So that's where
Okay.
people can find me if they want to learn more about me or just have a chat or just follow my journey on social media.
What types of things do you help people do? So if they're not sure, what's holistic life coaching? How would you explain it to somebody who is hearing this for the first time and they have no idea if it's something that they even want to do?
I mainly work with people that are going through or are on the verge of or recovering from burnout, and also people that are looking for life changes and transformations. And then the way I bring the holistic life coaching is that I really work with mind, body, and soul. And I know like everybody says this, but I actually truly believe in it. I have a 6-step framework where I go through different type of exercises. Some of them focus on mind, some of them on body, some of them going to deeper roots, so working with whatever is in the subconscious. So for me, holistic life coaching is approaching a problem, looking at it from a high level first, and then going into the small details, but from all aspects of life. Just to give you an example, I had one coaching session with one person, and it was about career changes, retirement. And actually, he realized he needed a divorce. And
Oh,
that's what holistic life coaching can do for you, because it doesn't limit itself just to the mind, because most of the coaching methods out there are just focused on the mind, but they don't go beyond that. They don't go working with the body. They don't go looking at the soul, desires, dreaming, manifesting, energy work. And I like to look at all of them, and then together we figure out how to move forward next.
it's different for everybody based on what they want, what they need. And I think when you were describing it, what I was thinking was that we stuff things down to fit into a comfort zone maybe, or just again because what's expected. I'm supposed to be doing this, and these negative emotions that pop up when things are not aligned, whether it's emotionally or spiritually, professionally, whatever it might be. If you don't address it, it festers a little bit and it might come out in the wrong place. And you were saying this person is looking at retirement and thinking about career and next steps, but the frustration and disappointment with the marriage was maybe being ignored because I don't want to address it because it's uncomfortable and it's hard to get a divorce and it's hard to face all of that stuff that comes with that. And so when you're talking about that, I was thinking how sometimes we want to avoid it or think that's part of marriage. You just deal with that.
Yeah,
And I think working with people like you, it's going to help you to really figure out where the discomfort is coming from. And maybe it's not what you think it is, but that's why it's so important to look at all of the factors because if you just pinpoint on one thing, you're not really addressing the root. You're fixing symptoms of a bigger problem. And so when you look at all of it and say, okay, well actually the problem is over here, but we're putting a band-aid on over there, we're not fixing it. That's what jumped into my mind was that we often don't want to do that work. But and I mean, too, it's interesting because in the long run, it's good. We suffer through what we're going through because we want to avoid what we think might happen. But when you just face it and get through it, it's not as bad as you thought, and you end up being much happier.
yeah, yeah.
We avoid what we think is going to be a bigger problem, and we actually make a bigger problem for ourselves by just avoiding it.
Absolutely. I mean,
And
actually, this morning I was having a coaching session with someone, and this came up as well, like the person not wanting to do certain things because they feel they're fine. It was a bit of a resistance type of situation where you say I'm fine, but then why are you looking for a change? If everything is okay, why are you here? Sometimes
right.
it's difficult as a coach when you see things, but you cannot tell people, hey, this is what the problem is. They need to realize themselves that something is not working, and what is it. So obviously our job as coaching is to help them get there, but then sometimes you get these clients that are so resistant, and that is difficult because as coaches we have no interest to give bad advice or to push people to do things they don't want to do. So it's definitely a thing I see on a regular basis. There's this resistance to actually embrace the difficulty and just walk through it, because the only way out is in, like they say. You have to really
Yeah.
look at it. You have to look at the darkness, accept it, embrace it, and move forward. As long as you pretend everything is fine, you might make a temporary change, and then 2 years later, you come back for coaching and say it wasn't efficient. Well, obviously, it was not efficient if you were not ready to do the hard work. But that's something it's sometimes difficult to say to people because some of them take offense, some of them can take it and are very open to having these kind of difficult discussions, but not everybody is open. So then, yeah, it's you have to be very diplomatic when you bring this up with the best intentions because you don't know how this is gonna be taken.
It's a fine line to walk because you want to help people, but you also can't give them the answers. Even if you can see it, you can't tell them they have to come to it themselves. But trying to support them in a way that makes sense, but that's not overstepping boundaries is it's a hard line. For folks who are not sure whether or not they should look into life coaching, one thing that you mentioned that jumped out was if everything's fine, why are you here? So if you're feeling a nudge maybe to look into life coaching or to fix something, maybe that's at least a good indication that it's worth looking into. You don't have to necessarily go through with it, but maybe just reach out to someone and talk and ask some questions to see if it's a good fit. Because if you're listening to this and you're like, none of this resonates at all, maybe that's not for you, and that's okay. Like, just listen to it and it's entertainment, move forward. But if you're listening to it and you're like, hmm, maybe it's worth a reach out to just say, here's where I'm at with life. Maybe let's do some digging. If that you get that little nudge or tickle in the back of your mind, maybe it's worth reaching out to someone like Florina to see if there's more to it. Because sometimes intuition speaks to us through other people and through other things. And that's something I've learned because I always thought when you have intuition or you have spirit guides, you're going to hear something in words. Like it's going to be like, Erica, do this. And it's not how it works. Like sometimes you hear a song that has a message, or you see somebody else who posts something online that you resonate with, and you're like, hmm. And sometimes that is the sign. And so if you're getting these nudges, sometimes that might be,
Yeah.
your intuition saying, check it out,
Yeah.
look at it.
And that's why I really love to bring meditation in a lot of my coaching practices as well, because meditation helps us with the awareness of being able to notice these signs. Because as you said, nobody's going to come knock at your door and say, hey, you need to fix your imposter syndrome. Like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
And even if someone tells you, you're not going to believe them because it's in your subconscious, right? But when you practice meditation, you start to become aware of your own thoughts and your own thought process. And then you start to observe yourself and the emotions and thoughts and behaviors that you're having during the day. And then you listen to a podcast like this and you feel something inside, like a gut feeling, or maybe tense shoulders, or your body's contracting. So you have these signals, but you don't know what to do with them. And that's where this awareness comes in. And that's why I love meditation, because it really helps you to kind of pinpoint, hold on a second, my body's telling me something, I'm tense, the energy is changing. And then, as you said, that's an invitation to look forward and look into it. Okay, what does this mean for me? And I love discovery calls when people just get in touch to have a chat, a free chat, to see if it can be a fit or not. Because even those ones, I just really love how people already get the value and how it opens their minds, and then they get ideas. And they don't always end up working with me, but I do love kind of opening the door for people and helping them to find their way somehow. And I feel like
Hmm.
this podcast is also one of those things where we're just talking here about our experiences and hoping that others, when they listen to it, they get inspired to take some action or change something.
Yeah. And that's how I got started with the whole spiritual stuff is I met somebody who did animal communication, and then
Mm-hmm.
my dog had asked her to teach me how to do it because she wanted to talk to me more. And so I started doing animal communication, and that led me to a pendulum and crystals and people online, and I just more and more, and I really loved it. So if you're hearing something and just thinking, that's interesting, maybe definitely check it out. It's a free discovery call. Maybe you work with Florina, maybe you just do some more research online. This might be the universe or God, spirit, source, whatever you call it. It could be them nudging you in the direction of maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to just do some reflection. And then one other question for you before we get ready to wrap. You mentioned meditation, and I think it's really helpful for people like me whose mind is always racing. And even when I meditate, it's hard to be quiet. I always thought I sucked at meditating. I couldn't do it. What advice do you have for folks who maybe feel like meditation won't help me because I can't quiet my thoughts?
Yeah, so you can't suck at meditation. You just need to find the type of meditation that works for you. So something I see a lot is like people think that you have to sit there all straight and have inner peace and not think and all that. That's completely wrong. I've worked quite a lot with meditation. I even went to spend some time at a Buddhist monastery as well with the Lama, and so I've been introduced to various types of meditation practices. And the thing is, you just need to find the type of meditation that works for you. For example, you can have also active meditations. You can be walking and focusing on the walk and how you're folding your knee and how your foot is touching the ground and just bringing all your awareness there. And then when your thoughts are coming into your head, be aware of them, observe them, and go back focusing on the walking. You can have meditation singing mantras, or simply listening to music, or open awareness meditation where you simply sit there and listen to all the sounds around you. And then again, when the thought comes in, you observe it, you notice it, you let it go, you'll go back to observing your environment. So there are many kind of tips and tricks and active types of meditation. So what I would say to anyone that feels like they suck at meditation is to maybe simply just Google different types of meditations or Google active meditations, and try a couple of them and then figure out which one is suitable for them, and then try to engage in that on a regular basis. And also, I would say start small. Start with 2 minutes a day. You don't have to
Hmm.
sit there for 1 hour. Start 2 minutes a day. For example, when you wake up, You go brush your teeth. When you're brushing your teeth, simply focus on the sensation of the toothbrush in your mouth, the taste of the toothpaste, the water. Is it cold? Is it hot? How does it feel? All that. Do that for 2 minutes every morning, just to get used to observing yourself rather than being stressed there. Oh my God, I need to stop all thinking. So these are just kind of small tips and tricks. I hope.
They definitely help because that's something I have learned since then. But my first thought was, man, I can't do this. Like you said, you don't have to start for a 2 hour silent meditation. It's really about being present. I always thought that meditation was silence, no thoughts, clear head, nothing happening. But really, it's when you're walking, feeling your feet on the ground, feeling right now my butt in the chair, and feeling my clothes against my skin, and being present in your moment. And so when you're brushing your teeth, not thinking about what you need to do today or what's going to happen at work, but being present. Like right now, I am looking at myself in the mirror, I'm brushing my teeth, and I'm feeling calm. And it's just being aware. And so I think a lot of people probably have a misconception of what meditation is because I know that I did. So I love you talk about active meditation, and I think that's a really great way for folks to start to step into it so that you don't dismiss it and think I can't do that. I'm not going to do it. Start small. Start simple. It's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
It's good. It really does help, especially if you start maybe in the morning and like 2 minutes at night before bed. It also, I think, helps to calm you down a little bit before you start your day, before you fall asleep, to clear yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But Florina, I could talk to you for hours about all of these things because it's very fascinating. I will put your website and your social media handles in the show notes. Is there anything else before we wrap that you wanted to say that you want to make sure people know? Any final thoughts?
I think I would just like to say that wherever you are on your journey, just keep it simple. There's so much out there. There's so many people selling so many services, so many spiritual gurus, so many different techniques and exercises and things to do. Whatever you do, keep it simple because you don't want to fall in the trap of overdoing even the spiritual work and the self development work because then you end up burning out doing too much self care. So I think that's something that many of us overlook when we're in this business. That even when we wanna take care of ourselves, we end up doing too much. So I would just say, just keep it simple.
That's a beautiful message and very true. And I have nothing to add because I think that's a great way to end. But Florina, thank you so much for joining me today. This was, I think, really great. And I think it's a great way for folks to understand a little bit more about what you do and get a peek into spirituality and mindfulness because it's not this woo woo thing. And I think for some folks, maybe growing up, like I grew up Catholic, and we just never talked about this, and it seemed a little bit more not taboo, but kind of taboo, and I think so that might be some of the limitations people have, and it's just being connected to your body, to the earth, the people around you. You're not sacrificing anything and making any kind of rituals and stuff. It's just being connected and being more aware of energy and how you're using it and how it's impacting you. So hopefully this was a really good, safe first step for folks to get into that. And if you have questions, I will direct you to Florina. She's going to be your guru on this part. Again, thank you so much for your time today. And I will put all the information in the show notes so that if you have questions or want to talk to her or work with her, you can do that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. This episode of Stumbling Forward was brought to you by Ori Ara's Self-Care Collective. Real women, real lives, and real self-care. It's empowering you to take care of yourself one day at a time. If you are interested in joining the Self-Care Collective, there are discount codes on the screen. Stumbling Forward member will get you 20% off your first month's membership, or the Stumbling Forward founder will get you 20% off a lifetime membership.